Time for our 360 round. We've got ACHR Aviation in focus ahead of earnings due after the bell today. I want to bring in John Jannarone, editor-in-chief and publisher of IPO Edge, for Insight First. John, thank you so much for joining us today. Let's talk about the expectations for today. They're expected to report a loss today. There's no revenue target because, look, they don't have any yet. When you think about that, their lack of current revenue and their market cap being $5 billion, is this justified?
Well, first of all, thanks for having me back, Diane. This is a really interesting story. If I might indulge me here, I've been following the CEO of this company for 10 years. Back when I was at CNBC, I just looked up an article. Very successful guy. He's really turned this thing around. You might have observed shortly after this company went public, along with, well, most of the other SPACs, you know, they dropped like rocks, but they've really come back a lot, as you said. But 5 billion, yeah, it's speculative, Diane, because this is really based on, you know, earnings a few years out, because they have no revenue or earnings, of course. And so what you need to look at is a path to revenue. And what they're trying to do is go overseas and get defense deals, which don't require the FAA clearance, which of course they still want to get. So that's the name of the game right now, is try to get that first bite of revenue in a jurisdiction where it's a little bit easier to get cleared.
All right, I want to bring in Michael Boyd into our conversation. Michael Boyd is the president of Boyd Group International. I don't know if you heard of all of John's comments, but one of the things, Michael, that I was bringing up is the fact that, look, it has for ACHR Aviation, they have a $5 billion market cap. Is this justified given that there's no revenue? You know, the expectation is that they're set to report a loss of 21 cents a share. What's your view?
Listen, I think it's an exciting concept, but nobody has any numbers. I mean, why are we looking at this when, again, it's a very exciting idea, but you got 4 revenue seats. I've never heard any hard data on what the demand is going to be, how many passengers it's going to be able to carry, the cost of it, other than saying, oh, be like Uber. Honestly, to be really honest, I think it's an idea everybody's bought into, but no one's asked any hard questions and certainly haven't answered any hard questions about what we're going to do with those things.
John, I want to get your perspective. You talked about that path to revenue. Is there a viable path to revenue from your point of view, especially when they talk about these partnerships? And then how credible is their timeline when it comes to FAA certification?
Well, so the FAA certification, unfortunately, just keeps getting kicked further and further out. You might remember when this company was going public, there was all this excitement about flying from San Francisco to Lake Tahoe. The latest is a discussion of New York, but they can't do any of that without FAA clearance. JP Morgan thinks it's a 2026, 2027 event, but there's still a lot of risk there. But I agree with the gentleman who just spoke. This is highly speculative. And honestly, the one thing that I'm looking at closely, Diane, is their cash burn and their liquidity. So they've got $1 billion in the balance sheet right now, having just done a capital raise very wisely a couple months ago. But if you look at their operating costs last year, $500 million. So, you know, until they start getting revenue, they're going to have to be in fundraising mode to keep the machine going.
That's a great point. So, Michael, to piggyback off of what John said, that $1 billion in liquidity, what should investors be looking for with regard to, on the earnings call, with regard to cost discipline, especially also given the cash burn?
Somebody should ask whether these things have a place. No one has answered the question. Will we have the battery technology? Already, NASA has grounded their prototype. Tecnom in Italy grounded their prototype. ACHR's talking a good show, but somebody better answer some questions about, A, what's it going to cost per person? What's the market viability of it? How many people it's going to be able to carry? Again, being in the airline business for 50 years, I'm asking, you got 4 seats, a very expensive piece of machinery. What are you going to have to charge for that, and will it work? This is a lot of air right now, and until we get some hard answers, I'm just off on the sidelines.
Okay, all right, watching from the sidelines. John, what's your thought on this? ACHR's announced this $500 million in orders from Japan's Soracle. They claim they've got this order book that's worth $1 billion. How much weight do you put on those order figures?
Well, look, you've got to deliver the product or you're not going to get paid. And I think that they're working on 10 or 12 being built at a factory in Georgia this year. So that's something else I want to hear about, is how that's all coming together. But yeah, the proof's in the pudding. We've got to see some of these actually get delivered and work. And, you know, as I said earlier, it's not going to be the United States first. It's most likely going to be in Abu Dhabi. So I'd like an update on all that. And getting back to the issue of the cash, I'd like to hear a little bit more about what their plans are over the next year or two, assuming they don't get much revenue at all. Are they going to go back to, sell more equity, debt? Probably not. So I'd like to hear more about those plans.
Yeah, shares higher right now, along with the broader market momentum we're seeing complete risk on, obviously, at the back of the news of the U.S. versus China. I want to thank both of you. That's John Jannarone, editor-in-chief and publisher of IPO Edge, and Michael Boyd, Boyd Group International president.